Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the Auto Insurance Town Hall. I'm State Senator Betty Jean Alexander. I'm your Michigan State Senator for the 5th District, which includes Redford, Inkster, Garden City, Dearborn Heights, and Detroit. On July 2nd, 2020, Michigan's new no-fault auto insurance reform law is giving drivers in our great state new coverage options to consider. We are honored to have Department of Insurance and Financial Services and their staff here with us today to answer your questions regarding the new coverage and changes. And now I would like to present the Director of the Department of Insurance and Financial Services, Anita Fox. Thank you, Anita Fox, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Senator Alexander. I'm so glad to be here and have a chance to talk to the residents of your district about the changes to the no-fault law that are coming. I welcome the opportunity to partner with you on this. Senator Alexander has been committed to work from the time she came into office to determine the best ways to lower auto insurance rates for consumers and protect them under the new law. She understands, and as a new legislator, has understood the challenges facing her constituents, which includes unaffordable car insurance rate. I'm gratified that she voted a yes on the bill that became this law, as it now will provide some relief for Michigan drivers, which is especially important during this tough time that we're facing right now and the economic hardship that there is on a lot of families. So thank you for your support of the law, Senator Alexander, and for your continued commitment to protecting consumers in your district and all throughout Michigan. I want to just talk a little bit. I'm sorry, go ahead, Senator.
I just say you're welcome.
Thank you. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Anita Fox. I was appointed by Governor Whitmer to this position to head the Department of Insurance and Financial Services in January of 2019. And shortly thereafter, we began working on this historic no-fault bill that became the law. It was a bipartisan bill that was signed into law by the governor, which is a change, the first change to our auto no-fault system in many decades. And it had been introduced many times and failed in different iterations. But this time, Governor Whitmer, working with the legislator and leaders like Senator Alexander, we were able to get the bill passed. And I want to talk to you a little bit today about some of the key aspects of that bill. So kind of the first question is that I always get asked, I've always heard people will say to me that Michigan had a good auto no-fault system, and why would we want to change that? And I would agree with you in some respects that Michigan had a great auto no-fault system for this reason, if for none other. Michigan was the only state in the country that provided for lifetime unlimited medical benefits if you were injured catastrophically, for example, in a car accident. And if that happens to you or your family, unlimited lifetime benefits are truly amazing. But the problem is, as you can imagine, that lifetime unlimited medical benefits are really expensive. And as a result, we saw that auto insurance rates were also very expensive in Michigan and pushing towards the highest costs in the entire country. So the challenge was to maintain what was good about our auto no-fault system, but improve it and make it more affordable for families in Michigan, because it can be the greatest coverage, but if you can't afford it, that isn't good coverage. And what we saw is we had a lot of families making tough decisions. Some people were driving, and in some areas, large numbers of people were driving uninsured. And that's not good for the people themselves and their families, and for people who may be involved in accidents with them. Families were making difficult choices, making choices between rent and tuition and prescription drugs and high auto insurance rates because they wanted to be in compliance with the law, or they didn't want their families to be at risk of an auto accident. No-fault insurance, which is what we're talking about, I always get asked kind of what that is and why would we have a system like that? Well, so no fault is a system where your own insurance company pays your medical costs if you're in an accident and some of your other costs. And a couple of years ago, I was driving in the Lansing area and I was broadsided by an uninsured, unlicensed driver who ran a red light. And when my insurance company began adding up the damages and the things they were going to pay, I had my first thought, probably like a lot of people, was why would my insurance pay? And why is it right for my insurance to pay and maybe affect my rates when I wasn't even at fault? I did nothing wrong. I was driving on a green light and was broadsided. But then I realized as I began to have my deal with my insurance company on my bills, what the other option would have been. And that would have been that my costs and my family's medical care would have been dependent on the choices made by that other driver, which I already know were choices I would not have made. This was an uninsured driver driving without a driver's license. So yes, it seems funny that your insurance company would be paying if you were not at fault. But it also means that I then had the ability to make choices for my family. And I knew that my coverage, without having to go through a lawsuit and figure out who was at fault, that from day one, my family's medical bills and my auto were covered. And I didn't have to rely on the legal system or on somebody else's choices. So I thought it was important that we maintain that system. And what the governor wanted to do, and working with Senator Alexander and others, was to maintain that system, but improve it and make it more affordable for Michigan families. And there are a few ways that the law does that. And you're going to hear more in detail from my staff. They're going to walk through some of the provisions of the law and explain also where you can go to get some additional information. This will probably be a lot of information for an original kind of a one setting, and you'll hear some terms that'll be new to you. But as you'll hear, we have a website and other ways where you can get that information, replay this tape if you need to, and obtain kind of information in advance of these choices that you have to make when you renew or buy auto insurance after July 1st, 2020. So some of the first and major way that the law will allow for you to work on reducing the cost of your insurance is by putting in choice for the first time. As I mentioned, we had the most generous benefits in the country, unlimited lifetime medical benefits. That choice is still available in Michigan, and it's the only state where it's available. But what the law did was let families make choices based on their needs, what they saw, based on how much they drive, maybe their tolerance for risk, their assets, other things. What is the kind of insurance picture that makes sense for them? And second, what is their family's budget? Those are decisions that we as consumers make all the time, and we make those decisions with all of our insurance. What are the limits I'm going to get? Do I want replacement costs for my house, or do I just want the value as it is today? How high of a deductible do I want? Meaning, how much do I want to pay before my insurance kicks in, because that's a way I can lower my premium. We make those decisions all the time, but we didn't have that choice in auto no fault. So the law injects into this a system where you can now make a choice about how much medical coverage you want on your auto policy. And you'll hear about those new levels and some options for relying on your health insurance to some extent in lieu of your auto insurance for medical costs associated with an accident, because that's another way you may be able to reduce the costs of your auto insurance. Another way that you'll hear about is that the auto no fault law did not have any limitations or schedules that said how much a doctor or other provider or hospital could charge an insurance company, your insurance company, for the care provided to you after an auto accident. And we know no matter what kind of medical insurance you have, whether it's Medicare or Medicaid or a private insurance, that there are agreements between the doctors and the insurance company as to how much they'll pay. It doesn't change what you as the patient receives, but how much the doctor or provider receives for the care they give you. There were no such limitations in auto no fault, and that's another thing that drove up cost. And now there will be limitations on how much a doctor or provider can charge. We already see some benefits from that as rates are looked at for the future. Equally important to the governor, though, in looking at this law was to make sure that there were still a lot of consumer protections in place and an expansion of those consumer protections. And some of those things include changing the kind of factors that an insurance company can use when they rate your coverage. Now they can't use such things as sex and marital status or home ownership in rating coverage. Those have been outlawed by the new law. We brought into a system where we are reviewing with outside actuaries the rate filings that companies make. In the past, up until now, the actuaries were employed, the actuaries, which are the people who review the mathematical calculations on the rates, they were employed by the insurance companies themselves, and though they certified that those rates made sense under the calculations that they made, there was no check and balance on that by anybody who would be able to challenge those assumptions. Now, in addition to a prior approval by the department that is contained in the law, the department has gone a step further and is requiring outside actuarial review so that we can make sure that the savings that are in the law are actually passed on to consumers. So you'll hear how the law is still a no-fault law, but an improved no-fault law that brings in some more consumer protections. It may not be a perfect law, and there may be some things that over the years will change again, but it was a significant step at a time when Michiganders really needed relief on their auto insurance bills. So that's kind of a very broad overview of what was accomplished with this historic bipartisan legislation. And I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Zach Dillinger, who is a consumer and communications specialist at our office. And he'll go through kind of the nuts and bolts and kind of where you can get some of this information. Afterwards, I will be available to take your questions that you bring into the system, questions for me or for the senator, so that we can answer some of your questions that you might have about kind of how the law is going to work. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Zach Dillinger.
Thank you, Director Fox and Senator Alexander. My name is Zach Dillinger, and I work in the communications area at the Department of Insurance and Financial Services, or DIFS as we call ourselves. So I'm here to dive a little deeper into the changes to auto insurance and help you understand what's happening and hopefully how to move forward. So we know the changes can seem big, but we're here to help and to make sure that you understand the changes that are coming this summer. And we'll provide you with resources, including our website, some videos we've made, some publications, and also you'll be able to watch this presentation again later on our website as we are recording today's broadcast. So let's get started. Okay, first, some background about DIFS. So we are fee funded and we do not require your tax dollars to operate. We regulate Michigan's insurance and financial industries, which include insurance agents, companies, mortgage companies, deferred presentment companies, or payday lenders as they're sometimes called, state chartered banks, and credit unions. In all of that work, our guiding principle is that we're regulators, and that means that we work for you as a consumer protection agency. In our day-to-day work, we work to foster economic opportunity for all Michigan consumers, seek to provide fair access to institutions that are safe, sound, and entitled to public confidence. And also, as we're doing here today, provide financial and insurance education to help people understand their options. So now that you know a little bit more about who we are, let's get on to the changes with the insurance law. So as we talk about the changes, it's very important that you know that there are three basic parts to a Michigan auto insurance policy. These three coverages are mandatory, which means you must buy them, and you will continue to have to buy them under the new law in order to drive legally in the state. So those three coverages are property protection insurance, PPI, personal injury protection medical coverage, we call that PIP, and residual liability, bodily injury, and property damage. Now, even I sometimes struggle with that. It is quite a mouthful, so we do call that BIPD for short. We'll only be speaking about how the new law affects the last two. It doesn't make many changes, if any at all, to PPI. So PIP and BIPD are going to be our focus here today. on the screen, you'll see these big picture changes. These are the key changes that the new law makes to the way our auto insurance works here in the state. So the new law provides drivers with a choice for the first time on the level of medical coverage that they want. It also lowers costs while maintaining the highest benefits available in the nation. And it also increases consumer protections. Now, it's very important that you all know that most of the changes we're going to talk about here today take effect for policies issued or renewed after July 1st, 2020, so a couple months from now. So let's get to the changes. So as I mentioned, PIP Medical is one of those mandatory coverages. PIP pays for medical care if policyholders are hurt in an auto accident. So as the director and senator both said, under the old law, everybody had to have unlimited PIP medical coverage. You did not have a choice. You had to buy it in order to drive legally. So now you're going to get to choose a level of PIP, which is right for you, your family, and your budget. The new available limits equal or exceed the highest benefits available in the country, and Michigan remains the only state where unlimited PIP medical continues to be an option that you have. So the levels that you do have access to are unlimited coverage per person per accident. So again, that's what we have now. Up to $500,000 in coverage per person per accident. Up to $250,000 in coverage per person per accident. Now there's a second $250,000 coverage level, and this one is a little different because it allows the policyholder to exclude certain people from coverage if those people have qualifying health coverage. We'll talk about what that is in a little bit. It's just important that you know that there are two $250,000 options. There's also a $50,000 coverage option, that's per person per accident, if the named insured is enrolled in Medicaid and everybody else in the household, all household members, have that qualifying health insurance or are covered under another Michigan auto insurance policy. Now there's also a medical PIP opt-out, which is available. That will be available to those folks who have Medicare Parts A and B. And again, like the $50,000 option, everybody else also has to have qualifying health insurance in their household, or again, access to another Michigan auto insurance policy. So it's important that you know that if you don't make a choice, a deliberate choice with your auto agent or your insurance company, you will default to be receiving the same unlimited coverage you have now, and you will pay the unlimited coverage premium. So the second point before was that the new law would lower costs while maintaining benefits. And what you see on the screen here is one of the most important ways that we're going to do just that. So each insurance company will be required for the next 8 years to reduce statewide average PIP medical premiums. The amount of the reduction depends on the level of coverage. So for the unlimited option, as you see on the screen, it's a required 10% reduction. For the $500,000 option, it's a 20% reduction. For the two $250,000 levels, it's a 35% reduction. And for the $50,000 option, it's a 45% reduction. Now you don't see the Medicare opt-out, because if you opt out, obviously it's 100% reduction. So also on the screen, you'll see some additional ways that the new law reduces costs. As the director mentioned, we will have a fee schedule. So unlike health insurance or Medicare, auto insurance previously did not have limitations on what a healthcare provider, so a nurse or a doctor or an ambulance service, could charge for those services. This fee schedule is a required cost control measure. You'll never see it. It's between the auto insurance companies and the healthcare providers, with the goal of making PIP medical care more affordable for consumers. The law sets a schedule of fees of what can be charged by those providers for those PIP medical services. Now, I want to highlight this because it's important that you know that this doesn't take effect until July 1st of 2021. So that's next year. The other things are this year. This particular part is next year. It's also very important you know that it doesn't mean you're going to lose care. You're going to get the same care you got before. It just means healthcare costs will be better controlled. Now, also on the screen, you see there the Michigan Catastrophic Claims Association assessment. So that's the MCCAI, and you've probably read about them in the newspaper or seen them on the news. So the MCCAI, in case you haven't seen them, is an association of auto insurers, and it's required by the state legislature. That group reimburses member companies for PIP medical costs which exceed an identified amount in the event of a catastrophic injury. So if someone is hurt very, very badly and it takes years and many, many thousands of dollars to bring them to a level of care, this is where that fee comes in. So the MCCAI has already announced that as a direct result of the new law, it's able to lower its per vehicle assessment starting July 2nd of this year, 2020. And this will save Michigan drivers at least $120 per car. Fee today is $220. After July 2nd, it's $100. And also, drivers choosing less than unlimited PIP medical coverage won't pay that assessment to the MCCAI going forward. So one of the most important parts of the new law is that it increases consumer protections in the insurance market and helps us to make sure that the market is fair. As the director mentioned, the new law has a number of things in it, and we're going to talk about those in a little more detail right now. So the first part is that it eliminates certain non-driving factors from a rating. So the rating process is where the insurance company determines how much you need to pay for your coverage. This new law prohibits a number of factors from being used. So those factors include sex, marital status, your home ownership status, your credit score, your educational attainment level, your occupation, and your zip code in setting your auto insurance rates. This new law also creates the Fraud Investigation Unit, which is a new unit within our office here in DIFS, and that investigates criminal and fraudulent activity related to the insurance and financial markets. So those folks work with the Attorney General and law enforcement agencies to prosecute those crimes. So this one's kind of a double dip for us because not only is it a consumer protection, but it's also a cost savings measure because auto insurance fraud drives up premiums for everybody. Now, as the director mentioned, the new law also requires prior approval. So all auto insurance rates, forms, policies, manuals, all of those must now be filed with and approved by DIFS prior to being offered to you as consumers. And finally, the new law increases fines and penalties. So the new law allows for those increased fines on insurance companies, agencies, and licensed agents for certain violations of the law. So when you go to choose your PIP coverage, you will need to choose a level that's appropriate for you based on your needs and your budget. Your auto insurance company or your agent will give you forms, and on those forms it'll have the benefits and risks of the coverage options that you have. So before you make your choice, you may also want to talk with an auto insurance agent or company to discuss your personal auto insurance needs before you make that choice. When you do go to make that choice, you may need certain information with you. That may include information from your health insurer or your employer, which identifies individuals covered on your health insurance. May also need a statement as to whether your health policy complies with the law, which means it doesn't exclude or limit auto accident injuries and has a deductible of less than $6,000. So that's that qualifying health coverage we were talking about before. Doesn't limit or exclude auto accident injuries, deductible of less than $6,000. That's what that means. And also, if you're a Medicare or Medicaid participant, you may need to bring proof of enrollment with you to be able to select one of those levels. So on the screen now, you'll see a sample of what this PIP form that your company or agent is going to give you, what it might look like. I say might because it can look a little different depending on the company, but it should have the same information you see there. This sample form is posted on our website, which is michigan.gov/auto insurance. If you want to take a closer look or read it over. So that's it for PIP. And earlier I mentioned that there are the 3 mandatory coverages, and we would talk about 2. So this is BIPD, and it's the second one we're going to talk about, final one we're going to talk about for that matter. So another choice you're going to get to make is your level of BI coverage. So the BIPD is the portion of your no-fault policy that will pay up to certain amounts if the policyholder is found legally responsible for certain damages. It pays for those claims which are made against you. Now, currently, the minimum BI coverage level, you've probably heard it referred to as 2040 or something like that. The minimum BI coverage level is $20,000 for a person who was hurt or killed in an accident, $40,000 for 2 or more persons in any one accident, and $10,000 for property damage in another state. So if you sideswipe a fence or something in Ohio, that's what that means. The new law will now allow drivers the ability to choose bodily injury limits, that's that BIPD, that best suit their family needs. So the old 2040 limits hadn't been adjusted for inflation in something like 30 years. And as we all know, things have gotten a little more expensive in the last 30 years. So drivers will now have the choice to purchase coverage of $50,000 per person and $100,000 per accident, or even higher, to protect yourselves against the increased potential for those lawsuits. And as with PIP, there was a default. There's a default here for BIPD as well. So if you don't make a choice, the new default minimum is $250,000 per person per accident and $500,000 for 2 or more persons in any one accident. Now, these are a lot of numbers. You may not be sure what it is that you need, so we do encourage you to consult with legal and financial advisors to determine what level of protection you might need before working with your licensed insurance agent to select your insurance coverage. This is going to protect your assets, your income from this new scope of potential financial liability. So like with your PIP choice, your company or your agent will give you a form to fill out to make your new BIPD choice. The form you see here, it's a little different because this is the approved form. The PIP form might look a little different. This is the form that your company should use. Probably won't say sample on it, I would guess, but other than that, it should be basically identical. This form is also posted to our website as well, so you can zoom in and read it when you have a free moment. While you're on the website, I also want to encourage you to visit and check out some videos that we've produced. So those videos will help you fill out the BIPD form and the PIP form. And those are also on our website at michigan.gov/auto insurance. You're going to get sick of hearing me say michigan.gov/auto insurance. But that covers the big changes from the law that I need to talk about here with you right now. Before we move on, I do want to take some time to tell you a little more about diffs and how we can help you. So perhaps the most important thing that we can tell you today is that we do want to hear from you. Our director, the senator, we're not necessarily going to be able to answer your individual questions about your specific auto insurance policy or your needs or what choice you should make, but we do have folks in our office. Ordinarily, they're in our office. Right now, they're working remotely, like many other people. Our call center is open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And those folks can help answer questions, whether they're auto insurance related or general insurance questions, or even financial questions. So those folks at the DIFS call center, they work within our Office of Consumer Services. And that Office of Consumer Services also handles all the complaints that come into our office. If you're concerned that your auto insurance company is unfairly delaying or denying your claim, perhaps charging you the wrong premium, or is otherwise not performing as they're required under the law, we are here to help you. So we do encourage you first to attempt to resolve that complaint directly with your agent or your auto insurance company. But if you can't reach a resolution, you can file a complaint in writing with our office via email or through our website. So speaking of websites, we have created a new one specific to this new auto insurance law to help educate consumers about the changes. As I've said several times now, the new website is michigan.gov/auto insurance. And it includes the things you see on the screen, a way to inform consumers about the auto insurance changes made by the new law, tips for shopping for insurance, how to file a complaint and what the complaint process looks like, what to do if you're having issues with your insurance company, agency, or agent, and a place to report insurance fraud. Now, this website has already been updated several times and will continue to be updated on an ongoing basis to make sure that it has the latest information available to Michigan drivers as we do get closer to July 1st, 2020. So to reiterate, we do want to hear from you. We all hear from the director, right on down to the senator, right on up to all of us. We all work for you, and we're here to help you with these new changes. So again, it's important to note that in advance of your auto insurance renewal after July 1st, 2020, your agent or insurance company will supply you with forms that describe the benefits and risks of your BI and your PIP coverage options. You may want to also consult with your agent to discuss your personal auto insurance needs. And please do call or email our office at the contact information on the screen if you have any questions about the forms or anything else related to the new law. So as you see on the screen there, our phone number is 833-ASK-DIFFS. Now, as I said before, I'm going to plug it again. We do have those sample forms, a number of really great handouts, one-pagers that you can read on various auto insurance topics. We do have those videos posted on our website as well. So we have a number of resources for you, and you will be able to see this video again later should you want to. And with that, I think we have hit the highlights. And so now we can take some of the questions that you've typed into the chat system or sent before. So please feel free to ask more questions as they come up in your mind. And please do remember that questions about your specific policy might be better answered by our office analysts. So with that, I'd like to introduce our question moderator, Andrea Miller. Andrea?
Thank you, Zach. Our first question is going to be directed to Director Fox. So Director, are you actually seeing discounts on rates so far? What is being done to make sure that insurers will follow the law and reduce our rates?
Okay, thanks for that question, Andrea, and for our viewers. The good news is we are seeing that not only have the filings so far shown that insurers are meeting the minimum required reductions, those amounts that Zach put up before that showed for each level of coverage what the statute required as a reduction, but the reductions that we're seeing have exceeded or are greater than what was required under the law. And to make sure of that, as I mentioned, in addition to our prior approval process and our rates informed professionals looking through each filing to see what's being done, we've also employed for the first time ever outside actuaries to check those numbers, ask questions, we raise objections, we send them back, we get answers before we approve any rate changes. So there's a lot of ways we're looking at that, but we're very optimistic about the premiums that will come out after July 1st, given the rate filings that we've seen so far.
Thank you. Another one for you, Director. If I don't have healthcare coverage, will I be forced to buy higher levels of PIP coverage?
So the PIP coverage choices are the same for anyone, whether they have health coverage or not. The health coverage under your auto policy is limited to health issues that you have arising out of an accident. It won't provide you coverage for other things, routine health care or other things, but you will be covered for the medical costs related to your accident, regardless of whether you have health care. Now, if you do have qualifying health care, which Zach described earlier, to not exclude auto accidents and have a deductible under $6,000, you might be able to rely on that health care and forego some of the medical coverage under your auto policy as a way of saving costs. But anybody who doesn't have health care will have the same choices as anyone else in terms of what levels of coverage they can buy.
Thank you. You somewhat touched on this, but can you explain what qualifying healthcare coverage is and how do I know if the insurance from my work meets that level?
Okay. So qualified health coverage, the idea of qualifying health coverage is this. Before we have people opt out of health coverage under their auto policy, we want to make sure that the coverage is in place under their health care. That is, that you're either covered for the medical costs of your accident under your auto or your health care, but we don't want to leave people who forego the medical coverage under their auto policy only to find out that they didn't have coverage for auto accidents under their health care policy. And so what the law requires is that in order to rely on your health care coverage to reduce your PIP costs by opting out of the PIP portion of medical, you have to have a policy that does not exclude or limit coverage for auto accidents. And most Michigan policies do not, and I'll just give you the caveat to that in a minute. But the second thing is they have to have a deductible of less than $6,000. The reason I said depends on some of it because some people have insurance provided through their employer that isn't provided by a private insurance company, but rather the employer itself. Large employers sometimes have this, or there are plans that are regulated by the federal government and not by the state. It doesn't matter to you as a consumer. Generally, you just know you have your health coverage, but it may matter in where you get your information from. So either your employer or your health insurer should provide you with a document that that tells you exactly whether your coverage meets that threshold or not. But if you have trouble getting it, you should start with your insurer or your agent. If they, if you know that your employer is one that might be passing those out as well, you can check with your employer. But start with your insurer, your health insurer, or your agent, and ask if you can get that certificate so that you'll have that ready when you go in to get your auto insurance.
Thank you. Another one for you, Director. I just renewed my policy. Will I need to contact my auto insurance agent to get the discounted rate, or will it apply automatically?
Good question. You know, whenever you have a law that doesn't take effect right away, you have those kinds of issues. So the legislature wanted to give the insurance industry a little bit of time to change all their systems, their forms, for us to review the new policy. So there is this kind of lag. So if you have a policy that renews before July 1st, it'll renew just under the old system, meaning that you'll have unlimited lifetime PIP and no choice in that. If you want to, you could just keep going with that policy to your next renewal, whether it's 6 months from that time in November or an entire year from now in next May. That's your choice. But you also may want to go to your agent and say, and find out, you know, what would my options be for canceling my policy after July 1st and getting a new one? Will it save me money? What will my choices be? And it'll be different for different people. For example, I'll just throw out something. If you had a couple of tickets, or someone in your family had an accident after, you know, right now before July 1st, maybe your rates are better off being kept what they are. Or if not, maybe you're better off and checking into the choices depending on what level you check. But that's something that will be up to you. You can stay with what you want, or you can what you have now as it's renewed, or you can look at what the choices are after July 1st.
Thank you, Director. I have one here for Senator Alexander. Senator, why did you support this legislation?
I supported this legislation because I knew how hard it is and how high people were paying on their insurance, and I knew that it would have and I know that it had an impact on our residents, especially me. Well, not especially everyone, but I know for personal experience how hard it was paying for insurance. And I felt this was a step in the right direction. I know that it's not perfect and it still needs some work, but I do know it was a step in the right direction to save money and to help everyone with their insurance.
Thank you, Senator. I have another question for Director Fax. My child was injured last year and still needs physical therapy and attendant care. Is there a risk we'll lose our coverage?
So the short answer is, and then I'll explain it a little bit. The shorter answer is no. The coverage that you had at the time of your auto accident will continue regardless of any change in the law. And that's kind of one of the major differences between health insurance and auto insurance. Your health insurance covers you if it's in effect on the day when you get the service. So if you go to the lab or the doctor today and you have health insurance, you turn in your insurance card and you're covered. If you lose your health insurance today and you go to the doctor tomorrow, even if it's the same illness or whatever, you're done, don't have insurance for that claim. With auto insurance, the day you get in your accident, your rights under that policy vest or become yours. And for as long as you have limits, and right now we know that's lifetime unlimited medical benefits, you would have coverage for that accident, even if you never pay another dollar premium for that policy. If you cancel your policy, if you're canceled, whatever happens, once you are in that accident, all costs up to the limits and in accordance with the terms of your policy would be covered for that accident, regardless of whether your insurance continues or not, and regardless of any change to the law.
Thank you, Director. Next question. When am I supposed to complete the PIP form? Does that get completed every year?
Well, the first thing is everybody's going to do the PIP form now because this is the first time we've had any choices. So Zach alluded to this, but what I would do is first is I would go to the website and look at that form because it has a lot of information. The PIP form has a few pages. First page kind of goes through the benefits and risks of each of the coverage. You know, one's more expensive, but this is what it doesn't cover, those kinds of things. And then it will go through the choices, you know, kind of what are the choices, and then it'll have a spot on it, the last page, where you make your choices and are able to say, yes, I understand what the choices are, and this is the choice I make for my family. But as long as you're continuing on, say when you go to renew, if you want to continue your coverage and you have auto coverage and you're getting your PIP, you're fine. You don't have to fill it out. The exception to that is where if you're going to continue opting out or excluding some folks under your policy, some of your family members who have health coverage under that 250 option, if you want to exclude some people from PIP medical, or you are excluded because you have Medicare or qualifying health coverage, you're going to be asked to reaffirm those choices at every renewal. And here's the reason. If your health insurance options change during the year, you switched health insurers, your deductible changed, you lost your health insurance or whatever, different people were added to your household. We want to make sure that everybody covered under the policy either has qualifying health coverage or they're included in your PIP medical. And because that could change from year to year, if you're going to exclude or limit anyone in terms of getting their medical coverage under their auto policy, you have to reaffirm that at the renewal. But otherwise, you can rely on your prior choice if you choose to.
Thank you. For people who don't have car insurance, there used to be a penalty if they wanted to get insured. Is that going away?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up because that's an important point. In the past, insurance companies were allowed to charge an additional kind of penalty for the fact that you didn't have insurance for a while and may have had uncovered risk. They could take that into account when you finally came back and said, you know what, I was uninsured, I was driving outside the law, but I want to buy auto insurance. And that was a disincentive to getting back in the system because it was going to cost you even more. If you get a policy after July 1st of this year, you will not be able to be charged that additional penalty for virtue of the fact that you had a period where you were uninsured. So for a period of 2 years now, starting on July 1st, you will not be able to charge that penalty. You charge that penalty for getting back into the system. So this is a good time for the uninsured, those who weren't able to make the payments before for whatever reason, to get back into the auto insurance system so that their family are protected and that they don't run the risks associated with violating the law.
Thank you, Director. My next question, I have Medicare, but it does not pay for auto-related care right now. Am I going to be covered under this law?
So there was a lot of talk and rumor about that going forward because in the past, Medicare didn't pay for Michigan auto accidents for seniors because they already had lifetime unlimited under their medical insurance. And how Medicare pays generally is if any other insurance you have pays first, Medicare pays after that, and there was no after that when you have lifetime unlimited care. Now that you can opt out of auto insurance, medical auto insurance, if you have Medicare, Medicare will step in and pay because you don't have another first policy for them to rely on. Medicare will then, according to the review that was done of our recent bulletin by the federal government, pay those costs.
Thank you. I understand that every insurance company is supposed to be mailing letters about the new prices for our car insurance. When can we expect them?
So typically, the renewal forms come out in the couple of months before you get your new insurance. So it depends on your renewal date. So if you have a policy that renews in July, you can probably expect that shortly you'll be getting those renewal materials from your insurance agent or company. If you don't get them, contact your company and say, I want some time to look that over before I have to renew. Also, we have, as Zach mentioned, sample forms on our website, so you can look at that. That won't have prices and the like, but it will get you started on the choices you have to make. But certainly, if you don't have something in enough time, reach out to your agent or your company, but you should be getting it in enough time to make those choices by July 1 if that's when you renew.
Okay, I think we have time for one more before turning it over to Zach so he can tell us a little bit more about where we can find some resources. So the last question, Director, is since my insurer already knows my zip code, marriage status, credit score, and other factors, how can I be assured these factors are no longer used to determine my rate?
So the way rate filings work is all of those factors have to be turned in to DIFS for review before the new rate could be issued, a rate that's different from the rate you were charged in the past, or now all insurers had to turn that in to show compliance with the new law. There were a couple of insurers that still had some of those factors in their rate filings, and those were rejected by DIFS. Objections were issued, and they were sent back to refile their rates without reference to those factors. So they may know them about you, and they may know a lot of other things about you that they can't use or are unrelated to the risk. But these factors, we have reviewed all the filings to make sure that they were not using those factors in their new rate filings.
Thank you, Director. And right now I'll turn this back over to Zach and he can explain a little bit more about where we can find more resources.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm sorry I can't take other questions. If you had others, please, and I'm sure Zach will tell people how they can email their questions into DIFS if they need, if they have a question that didn't get answered here today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank everyone for attending today. We received a number of questions. We just simply run out of time. So if we didn't answer your question directly, as Director said, we do apologize, but you can email your written question to the address which you see on the screen. It's autoinsurance@michigan.gov. Also, please do check back to the FAQs, frequently asked questions, posted to our website, which for the final time, michigan.gov/auto-insurance. And you can also connect with us on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Senator Alexander for today's closing.
Thank you, Director Anita Fox and your team for joining us and talking about the upcoming changes to Michigan's auto insurance. We all know that it's not perfect, but we will work to get more things done to lower the rates. But the good thing is we don't have to worry about our credit score, your zip code. That's all going to help in lowering our insurance. Thank you to my constituents for joining us and participating in the first virtual town hall. And if you have any more questions about the new law, you can go to michigan.gov/auto insurance, or you can visit my Facebook page, which is State Senator Betty Jean Alexander. You can also feel free to call us, contact our office by calling us at 517-373-0994, or you can email me at Senator Betty Alexander at senate.michigan.gov. It's my honor to serve you, the citizens of District 5. Thank you again.
Thank you, Senator Alexander, for sponsoring this and for including us in this discussion today. We're excited about the new changes and the opportunity to get some of this information to your constituents. So thank you again.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
Everybody stay safe. Bye-bye.
You as well. Bye.